5 main points or pillars. I am going to squish them into 3. One of them is data-driven and dynamic thinking. So what this includes is making sure that all of our decisions are based on evidence and having long-term planning. So for example, if we build something, when we build it, we know it's going to need to be maintained and that it's going to cost money to maintain it. So we have to plan for that in the long term. And that's important because we only have a certain amount of money to spend. And so we need to prioritize that spending and be really specific and intentional about what we spend our money on. The next one is transparent and accountable. This is related to the first one in that if we base our decisions on data, we can show the community why we're making certain decisions. And of course, at that point, the community can hold us accountable. Especially when we make decisions, we should be making sure that in the long term, we have milestones that we're trying to meet and metrics that we're trying to achieve. So that at the end of 4 years, there's really a scoreboard that people can look at and say, okay, I see where you were successful during the term and maybe where you were unsuccessful. And that's okay, but we need to learn from our mistakes. And in order to learn from your mistakes, you have to know you made one. And then the last pillar is collaborative and caring. It's really important to me that all of the community is considered when city government is making decisions. So part of that is just making sure that they have the information they need to contribute to the decisions. But part of that is giving more opportunities for people to contribute, everyone to contribute. And we also need to make sure that we are having good relationships with the provincial and federal government. The provincial government controls healthcare. They provide the municipality with various grants. And we need to have an ongoing relationship with them so that if something's coming down the pike, they know who to contact at our shop. And if we have any questions or concerns, we know who to contact at their shop. And that's just basic relationship building. Making sure that if we do have criticisms of the government, we are gentle about them or make them behind closed doors where to the person that we have concerns with, not, being boisterously negative in public so that, people aren't going to pick up the phone when we call. So that's my, in a nutshell, platform. Justin, do you want to tell us a little bit about your platform?
For sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Wright. I am a local business owner, entrepreneur, employer in town here and community volunteer. My platform is really built upon 3 things, and that is, community first policy. If we take a look at some of the current policies, we are really feeling I don't want to use the term alienation because it's pretty strong in its premise, but there's a bit of a growing consensus in the community that we are not being listened to in our own neighborhood, specifically around rec closures, changing how we've viewed the rec plan, in favor of the megaplex models. It's not to say megaplexes don't have a spot in the ecosystem. They certainly do, but definitely having that community first, grassroots minded policy decision making. Family focused, I feel this is the largest demographic for us that we need to grow. This is really what future proofs our community, both from a population growth, workforce backfill, as well as it's the next generation of entrepreneurs that are going to be coming out of that demographic. And then really just coming down to making sure that we are fiscally responsible, making sure that we are, I use the term of legacy a lot in my posts and conversations with folks. The legacy that we leave is going to be one of 2 things, either positive for those generations to come after us, or negative. And our fiscal responsibility has to be a positive legacy that we leave for those to come afterwards. That's how we can maintain sustainability as a community. That's how we can continue to fund these great amenities that we have in our community. But everything's got a cost, and we can't go, just trailblazing into debt. We have to make sure that we have got the income to pay for all of those items. That's really the campaign in a nutshell. It seems simple, but it really boils down to having the population to pay the taxes and expanding expanding access to amenities for our families.
Justin, you mentioned that you wanted to leave a positive legacy. What does that look like for you?
For me, I think that's where we see population growth that is on par with our neighbors. When I take a look at Calgary, Brooks, and Lethbridge, I'm just going over to my notes here, sorry. All three of those communities are growing at 1.9% for Calgary, 1.64% for Brooks, and 1.5% for Lethbridge. Whereas Medicine Hat's had a very stagnant growth. There's this old mindset that goes back quite a ways that slow growth is good growth. And unfortunately, it really leads to us losing our competitive edge compared to other municipalities. It creates some of the problems. I know one of the questions we're going to be talking about is in the next 10 years, what's kind of some of the plan for backfill and whatnot for our workforce. But, it leads to this point where, 55% of our population is 55 years of age. And in 10 years' time, they cross that threshold of retirement, which is going to leave a really big hole in our workforce. So when we talk about, legacy, it's got to be growing the population and maintaining a competitive edge to the other great places to live in this province. I'm a little selfish. I like to say that Medicine Hat's the best place to live, but there's a lot of other good options that are out there. We're financially responsible, and our neighborhoods are taken care of. Linnsie, I think you're muted. Or
you are correct, sir. Immanuel, can you tell us a little bit about your platform?
I think he's muted.
You copied me, Immanuel. You're muted. Immanuel, you're still muted, so I'm gonna maybe get Brad to say his platform, and then we can come back to you.
Okay, my name's Brad Gruszie, and as Linnsie, I work for the City of Medicine Hat for 10 years, and on near the end of March, I was let go due to COVID. Which is hard. Oh, sorry. I can hear Immanuel now, so I just wanted to he figured out his mic. So like I said, I was let go because of our fiscally fit, and that is fine. There's no problem with that. That is one thing that I do want to touch on, which is part of my platform. It do have to be fiscally fit, but we have to be careful on where we draw the line, and also what we're going to be fiscally fit on. Some things are going to be okay, and some things aren't. We also have a lot of money in reserves, and somebody said to me one day, they said, well, the reserves are for when we have tough times. And my answer was, well, it's thundering, it's lightning, and it's raining. So I'm thinking this is a pretty tough time. We need to use some of that money to put back into the city. When things get better, then you put the money back and reinvest it. That's kind of the biggest one. A lot of other little things that I feel personally about, and it might not necessarily be platform, but it's just personal things, is our power plant. I do not believe that that should be sold. Working part of my career with UDS, I think that's a huge mistake. That doesn't mean I'm not for green energy if we can produce it. I'm not an expert in that, so I wouldn't even say how we would produce it. But I would definitely be for that. Another thing that I am for is, as owners of our own utility, we should be paying the least amount on our electric bill for electricity. The citizens of Medicine Hat own that utility. And I know we hate to say this word to bring back the Medicine Hat advantage, but I believe it's true in this case because we definitely own that. Every citizen has put money into that, that pays taxes. And I believe we should get a, not a rebate, but we should be lower than everybody else in the province. Go ahead. Were you going to say something, Linnsie? Sorry. You're still muted, Linnsie.
Dang it. Sorry, guys. I will get the hang of it by the end. Brad, I was just going to flip over to Immanuel for his platform.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Linnsie, and thanks for inviting us. I mean, my platform is almost like everybody else's. We have to talk about fiscal responsibility, and that means we have to spend the money that belongs to the citizens wisely. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're going to not spend the money, but we need to get value for that money, whether it's monetary value or a community or social value, like the rec centers. I mean, the rec centers may or may not be the cheapest way to go, but they have a community value to everybody that lives around those places. They are a home. Transparency is kind of a buzzword that we all use, but I think it's more than that. I think it's community engagement. The council has to bring forward all the information they have to the citizens, and it's their responsibility. It's not my responsibility to look on page 7 of the website, click it 14 times to find out any information. That information should be available, and it should be done at the council's behest or by the council so that we all know what the discussion is, what's going to go on, why the council is making some decision, and the wherefores of that. We need a short and long-term strategy for growth. We need to maintain the businesses that we have here. We have to allow them to grow or help them to grow. We need to have some methodology, whether it's Invest Medicine Hat or a group like Invest Medicine Hat, an entity that will sell Medicine Hat. We have to sell that YXH brand. We have to invite some larger corporations, medium-sized corporations, because they bring jobs. And it may be a regional approach. I mean, you take somebody like Big Marble, right? I mean, they're not in the city, but they have 300 employees, and those employees live in the city of Medicine Hat. They pay taxes here, they buy their stuff here. So that, may be something that we have to look at on a regional basis beyond just the city of Medicine Hat. We used to be, in an older time that Bernie and I used to remember, we were the 5th largest city in Alberta. And for the longest time, we were the 5th largest city in Alberta. And now we're the 10th largest city. Our growth has not kept up to the rest of the province. So, I mean, that's something we have to look at. Population is a key. We need to find some way to bring young families here. We need to invite people who are now working from home and have them move to a smaller community where life is easier and life is less expensive. If you're in Calgary, my daughter works in Calgary. She lives in a very expensive apartment. She works full-time from home, but I don't think I'm going to get her to come back here. So that's just saying, but that's something we should really look at. I mean, if you're looking at businesses that are here, I mean, what do they talk about when you talk to them? They talk about taxation and assessment. They talk about red tape. They talk about utility costs. They talk about building and development costs when they want to enlarge their business or build a new building or buy a new building. So what it is between the business community, the citizens, and the council. It's a collaborative process. We all want the same thing. We want a vital city. We want the city to grow. We want people to come here. We want to share that burden of taxation beyond the people that are here. For those of us that are in the darkness of middle age, the seniors can't support this community. And Brad's right. The seniors can't support this community. You need young people that buy stuff here. You need young people that spend money. You need young people that have a future here.
Thanks, Immanuel. So now we're gonna go through a couple of questions. The reason I wanted to do these is because there's a lot of candidates running this time, and it's tough to get to know people just through their website or their platform. And the thought of me talking about myself for 1 hour would not be very appetizing to me. So I thought it would be great to have 3 candidates on at a time so that they can tell you about their platforms. And it's good, in my view, to have divergent views on council. I think we can all agree that there's been a real lack of debate in council over the last 4 years. And so no one really has to publicly defend their positions or take a different position that maybe does represent another part of the community. We just don't see those discussions. So there's a lot of different types of candidates this time, and I think it's important for everybody to know who they have to choose from. So Justin, over the next 10 years, what would you do to encourage workers, our local businesses, to encourage workers that our local businesses need to live here?
For sure. Well, thanks for these. First of all, putting an event like this together. This is very important to the democratic process so that everybody really can understand what's going on. This question has been eating at me for probably 8 years now, and trying to do what you can in your own sphere of influence has been super important on this. Ultimately, Medicine Hat has to go back and revisit its branding. How it's branded itself as a city in regards to taxation, how it's branded itself as a competitor to the rest of the municipalities for populace. Ultimately, when we rebrand ourselves, we can come at it from a stance with our very distinct advantages. And I know that's a buzzword, but I'm going to use it anyways. Utilities, as Brad called out, is an advantage. If we sell that utility plant, you know that whoever buys it is going to turn a profit regardless of what the carbon tax is doing, regardless of anything like that. Our rec centers, they are our advantage. We are, for the longest time, have been very neighborhood minded. You go into some of the bigger centers and they have less and less less and less neighborhood centers and more of the big centers. But we also have something that is pretty, unique to Alberta, and that's a lot of water. Our waterfront has the opportunity to really become something that can set us apart. I look at areas like Saskatoon, where they've taken a very distinct area of the city, transformed it, and made it into something that drives populace there. If we can increase tourism through all of our different advantages, such as amenities, our rec centers, utilities, things like that, we can get people to stay. People don't move somewhere on a whim. They've been there, they've experienced it, they fall in love with the majesty of that place. And I think that that is ultimately one of the things that we need to do. The next piece we have to look at is taxation. There is a 2.31% taxation gap that Medicine Hat faces. We have to be competitive to attract populace and business. If your property taxes, if your business tax, whatever the case is higher than anywhere else, people are discouraged from looking at the pieces like that. As I mentioned before, our other competition, and I'm going to call them that, our competition is getting aggressive, it's getting hungry, and they're going to be facing the exact same issues, but they've already taken responses to address that. One other piece that I think we should look at, it's more of a provincial issue, but we are a stakeholder in this conversation, is if we could get the college transition to a university. Any community that has a university transition sees an uptake in students, uptake in population, uptick in tourism, and thus meaning an uptick in our overall economy. as well as populous growth. So I'm going to leave it at that. You're muted, Linnsie.
Oh dear. Thank you for that, Justin. And I guess we'll go to Brad next. How do you feel that your education and background will contribute to your role as a councillor? Now Hugh's muted. It's you, Brad.
Okay, we're even. Sorry, yeah, I did mute it earlier so you wouldn't hear anything in the background here and forgot to hit it. Being an employee of the City of Medicine Hat and working with all the departments in the job that I did, I feel I have a lot of personal relationships with every department. And I feel as instead of talking to those people on a business level, I can talk to them on a personal level and just kind of get a feeling of how everything is, how they're feeling with their job, how they're feeling with what the city's doing and what we would be doing as council, and just getting an overall view of how everybody feels. And like I said, I've worked with every department, not as much with City Hall, but definitely police, fire, EU, MW, electric, and parks. And like I said, I think that I have the ability to maybe bring some of their ideas and their thoughts forward so that everybody is able to maybe actually have a voice also, not only in the city, but with us as council. Okay, now you're muted.
You mentioned that you worked for the city, but what is your actual like education and like background that you have in terms of like what did you do?
Okay, so for the city, I was a communication technician. I worked on the traffic lights as well as two-way radios. I also did fiber. What else do we do? Telephones, cell phones. So my range of what I did was a lot of various things, but being able to do those various things also led me to, like I said, relationships with the employees of the City of Medicine Hat. And like I said, I'm hoping that I can bring the information that they would like to see brought forward to council, because right now everybody's scared to say a word that they're going to lose their job.
Thanks, Brad. Immanuel.
Yes.
If there was one thing that council did over the previous 4 years that you could change, what would it be?
Well, they did so many things. And I don't know if we really want to focus on those things that they did poorly. I mean, we can. I mean, downtown is one of the biggest problems that we didn't do over the last 4 years, and we probably haven't done for some time. A downtown redevelopment, making sure that there's a beating heart to the City of Medicine Hat is what downtown is. We have to find a way to bring people to live downtown, and that's the only way downtown is going to succeed. I mean, we can do the waterfront development, we can do this beautiful parking lot that we're doing downtown with sea cans or whatever we're going to do, but downtown will only survive, downtown will only grow if we can bring people downtown. So that means either we have to allow the people that own buildings downtown to renovate them and not tax them to death once the renovation is done. We have to figure out a way to lower their costs, get rid of the offsite levies, do away with tipping charges if they're going to rip their building down, do something with the planning and building costs. I mean, there's lots of ways you can do it. There can be a graduated taxation system downtown where you start small and grow the taxation from there on, so that there's not that big hump once you finish building it, that you get that giant tax bill right off the get-go. downtown has to be made, as much as we don't like to discuss it, downtown has to be safer. Currently, we go downtown. I live 2 blocks from downtown. We walk there all the time. We go to the restaurants downtown, the coffee shops downtown. But later in the night, it is certainly not a great place that you want to bring your family to. So, it's about, there's transients, there's guns and drugs and money. So that's a problem that we have to solve. Now, it's a problem that we can't just say, let's build downtown without having, sorry, I just got binged. It's a problem that we have to resolve, right? If you want people to live downtown. Obviously, New Rock is going to build an apartment building where the old arena is. So that's population. But that's for the downtown, really for the downtown area. That is not downtown. In an older sense, that's still flats. But
Immanuel, you say that you do go downtown quite frequently.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just wondering what you think is positive about downtown and why you think it's so important to have a vital downtown for the success of a city.
Well, obviously in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a strong growth on 2nd Street, and that's a start. When we have restaurants, we have coffee houses. we still have the Monarch theaters, but I don't know how that's actually going to work in the end with the city ownership. There's a number of restaurants on 3rd Street. There's the bar. It's the Travois Brewery is downtown. But what we need to do downtown is have shops, stores. In a previous life, downtown was full of stores. That kept away things like transients, because there were people downtown all the time. There were people that shopped downtown, there were people that worked downtown, but we sort of lost that to the malls and the big box stores. If you don't have a downtown, you just become a giant suburb, right? You need to have a place where people that want to come, so that they will spend their money in the city that they live, spend it with local merchants, with local vendors, with small business. So that's all important.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Immanuel. Back to Justin, and we do have some questions coming in on the chat, so we will try to get to some of those. Justin, how will you, over the next 4 years, how would you make sure that all of the citizens are represented, not just the citizens that align with your perspective?
Not muted. Perfect. This is a really great question, because ultimately it boils down to putting yourself out there through, we used to call them town halls we'll call it the past life, or, just meetings in regards to putting yourself out there so folks can understand the whys behind decisions. If you can explain the whys on a call that's made, that has been researched, that feedback has been brought in, that you've solicited the right information from stakeholders on both sides, people are often more engaging around those conversations than just a closed door meeting. Hey, we debated it behind closed doors. By the way, it's passing 8-0. Away we go. Transparency in that decision-making process goes a long way. You have to be, I always joke that when I'm making a decision or making a call or a stance on something, I go and I spend some time combating my own stance. I do the research that goes against it. I do the, reaching out of conversation, or reaching out for questions with people that I know take a different stance than I do on a topic. And I put in the groundwork to really facilitate different people's ideas. At the end of the day, you've got to look at your stats. You've got to look at, the impact on the community, both financially, physically, as well as the emotional piece, right? And when you are able to facilitate the correct information, you can make decisions that is amicable to most sides. They may not necessarily like the decision, but you factored all sides in on that. But if we go from this stance of this is the way we're doing it, my way or the highway, closed door meetings, it's going to alienate everybody in the community. And I think that's kind of the sense that I've been getting from a lot of folks, specifically around transparency, as I've been doing some door knocking. If we are open and upfront, we can have those very distinct conversations and get fruitful outcomes from them. That's what I got.
Thank you. I think with transparency, you can prevent a lot of the speculation and rumors that sometimes when you aren't transparent about your decision making, people make it up. They fill in the blanks, and that can lead to hard feelings and maybe even some negative feelings towards the city that aren't based in reality even. So I definitely agree that transparency is critical.
If you leave it in the gray, they'll make up their own facts.
Yeah. So Brad, over to you. How would you ensure that the city of Medicine Hat becomes an active collaborator with the region? So you can also define, if you want, like what you would consider to be the region.
Okay. Actually, I guess my question is, does anybody know if, or do you know if this is an issue right now? Are we having issues with our neighboring communities such as Dunmore, Redcliffe, Bow Island?
Yeah, Brad, so there was a active collaboration about 2 or 3 years ago when the Business Retention and Expansion and Workforce Development Project was underway, where there was 5 municipalities participated in that, including us. That's kind of tapered off a bit, but they're starting to relaunch it now and getting that work better. But one thing I think we haven't necessarily overcome yet is how we prevent competition between the region. Obviously, there's this tendency to say, like, I want that business in our municipality so we can get the taxes, but that's not always best for the region. It's not always best for the business. It's not always best for the citizens. Does that help?
Yeah. I believe that what we need to do is we have to have common goals with the people that we're going to be working with. We need to also have good relationships with those people. And in saying that myself, I actually, and this might be a wee little bit off topic, but I actually do have some good relationships with Redcliffe. I do have good relationships with 40 Mile. I do have good relationships with Cypress County. And I think that's the biggest thing that we need is if you have a good relationship with the different counties, that you work together for a common goal. Regardless of what the goal is, everybody works together instead of working against each other.
So Brad, how would you go about building those relationships? Like you mentioned that you already kind of do have relationships. How do you build and maintain those close relationships, despite the fact that sometimes you might have interests that oppose each other?
Well, I mean, obviously, to build relationships, that means that you have to talk amongst each other. You have to get together, whether it be a coffee, whether it be a formal meeting, it doesn't matter. But you have to build a strong relationship with the communities around you. And once you have that relationship with the communities around you, then you can move forward on economic issues or anything that needs to be done. But if you don't have that strong relationship, you will have people saying, I want this in my area. I want this in my area, because they really don't care about your area.
Yeah, Brad, and I think what you said a bit earlier about the common goals, that's really important, just to identify what our common goals are, because sometimes if we don't specifically identify them, we end up not recognizing what they are and how we can benefit from each other. So thank you for your answer on that one. Immanuel, how would you go about being an ambassador for our city with the provincial and federal governments?
Yeah, that's all about relationship building. So that whether it's your MLA here or the MP, and it really doesn't matter who the government is, whether it's an NDP government or a UCP government, you need to talk. You need to talk, and you need to talk. So you can do that. We can do that. We can use the AUMA, the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, to be part of that discussion. Everybody that's a citizen can also bring forth whatever specific issues they have to your MLA, to your MP, so that we're not the only ones that are doing the talking. So if they hear, it's more impactful if you have more people saying the same thing. If there's a problem in Medicine Hat, we can define it, but it's more impactful to those politicians that are higher than us on the food chain if there's more citizens in Medicine Hat making that argument. If you're talking about the federal government, we have an in. Robin Kirby-White is the rural chair for the Canadian Federation of Municipalities. So that's always a good thing to have if you can have somebody that's closer to the center of power, especially Ottawa, because we're in Alberta, kind of a forgotten corner of the whole province, never mind just Medicine Hat. But I mean, you have to talk. You have to create a personal relationship with everybody that's out there. So whether if we're politicians, we're all going to be politicians. We talk to politicians. You have to make sure that your staff talks to their staff so that we're all on the same page, because it's not our job to talk to the staff, because we don't do it with ours, and it's not their position or their role to talk to the politicians. So it's all about, again, relationship building. We need to foster those relationships to be successful. We need to talk, and we need to talk, and we need to talk. Sorry, that's how the business works. You can't just sort of make a phone call and expect the world to change, because it doesn't happen that way. You have to make what point you have. You have to reiterate that point, after having some discussion what their problem is with it, but you still have to reiterate the point that you're going to make, and what service that you want, what money that you want, or what they can do for you. Because the money, lots of the money that we spend comes from the province.
I think it also comes down to, as well, identifying what your shared goals are. And we sometimes might think we need X, and that's the only way to do it. The only way to get economic development is maybe a grant or something like that, which is not the case, but just
not the case.
But just say, and then we go and talk to the provincial government, and they say, well, we have this other thing that we were thinking about. And over time, you can kind of identify how you can meet each other's needs, instead of just focusing on what we need. If we focus on the overall goals, then we can find out a way that both of our interests get served, and we still end up getting, moving forward with the plan that we had intended.
Well, it's no different than the citizens in the council. It's a collaborative process. I mean, we have goals, they have goals, but we still need to make sure that they understand what our goals are. And you're right, we need to understand what their goals are, but we serve the citizens of Medicine Hat. That's who we work for. So whatever we think is the best for the citizens, we have to make sure that the province or the feds understand what our goals are, what our citizens want, not just what the council wants, but what our citizens really want.
Yes. So I'm gonna take a couple of questions from the chat. So we'll start with the tricky one. We don't have a lot of time left, so I'm gonna maybe keep it to 30 seconds if possible. What is everybody's view on closing River Road and Finley Bridge? That's an easy one. Just before we sort of start with that one, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what stage that project is at. And there is a lot of planning and testing that needs to happen before we do any of that. But over to you, Justin.
It's always amazing, and going back to the point from earlier, how a little bit of information missing from something and how quickly, it brings to fruition it's happening. 100% against it at this point in time. We have to look at some very key traffic flow questions in order to even have that a possibility in my mind. When we take a look at the last 10 years, we pulled a fire station from the Flats area across the river because there was concerns with traffic flow getting through that congestion, that bottleneck. If we are looking at closing River Road as part of whichever expansion or phase of the waterfront district, we need to have a very distinct and very accessible means of diverting that traffic that is not just along First Street to that intersection there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it turns out it's 1 minute that we're getting. Emmanuel, over to you. Or I guess, Brad, you're up next.
Okay, actually, I'm just going to finish what Justin said, which is he's pretty much hit the nail on the head here. The biggest problem that we're going to have is if you have to use First Street, there is no way you'd get a ladder truck under the railroad bridge. Absolutely no way, nor would you get a fire engine under there. So if something else that's not shown in that plan isn't there to get emergency access over to the west part of town, the southwest part of town, that's a real big issue for me. And again, that's because I have worked with police and fire, and I know how they work. And it's if you can't get those vehicles over there, because as soon as you try and go under the bridge, it'll get stuck. So that's my big issue.
Thanks, Brad. How about you, Emmanuel?
Well, the whole waterfront district is just a vision. That's all. It has no flesh. I mean, we're looking at a 20 or 30-year timeline. That means there's going to have to be a bunch of councils and a bunch of citizens that are on side that we go this way. There is in no narrow time frame or short-term time frame is that River Road going to close. We're not going to close Finley Bridge because we just spent a ton of money fixing the roadway to ensure that it's still capable of using traffic or traffic going across that bridge. If you close River Road, that means all that traffic is driven through the downtown, and it's close and narrow enough as it is. I don't think that downtown will be able to support all that traffic. So that means people are going to use the highway, or they're going to try to go down Maple Avenue, and that's going to clog that traffic something fierce too. So I was alive when there was no River Road, and that River Road was a godsend, so you didn't have to drive through downtown. And I use it almost every day, and it's quick, it's easy. If you close that traffic, you're going to have problems downtown. It's difficult enough, So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for all of your answers. It sounds like we all kind of agree there needs to be additional thought put into it, and certainly some consultation with the city and the downtown community as well. So, and like Emmanuel said, it is a long-term process and a long-term vision. So it is going to take some time. The next question up that we're going to answer is, all of the candidates are talking about growth and about families moving here. What ideas would you have to bring these young families back to Medicine Hat? So we'll start this time with Emmanuel.
So if you want young families to come here and stay here, they need jobs. I mean, if you look at what we have water, we have sunshine, we have electrical utility, we have paths, we have the leisure center, we've got the Esplanade, we've got Medalta, we've got a college that everybody is really talking into a university, but I think that's going to be sometime. But you need to create jobs here. So that means either expanding the small businesses that are here or inviting bigger businesses to come. That's the only way they're going to come. They're not going to come if they have no work to do here. So, I mean, we can say that as it's an apple pie in the sky thing, but we need jobs first. Another avenue of population growth that we haven't talked about is immigration. I mean, currently immigrants that come to Canada like to move to the big cities, but we can focus on bringing some immigration here, because they come with families, they're young, they're entrepreneurial, and certainly would provide some growth for the city.
Thank you. How about you, Brad?
Can you repeat the question, please, Linnsie?
Yes, I can. We're talking about growth and getting families to move here. What ideas would you have to bring these young families back to Medicine Hat?
I know we're talking growth, and I did say this when we were at the Stampede, but we really have to make sure that we don't lose our rinks and our pools, because nobody will come here if there's no facilities for their kids. And I guess I shouldn't say nobody, because that's not 100% correct. I guess if you don't have kids, it might not be as big a concern. But if we lose our pools and we lose our rinks, we're definitely cutting the pool of people that want to come here in half. Now, I know we're speaking about growth, but I know that I had a thought that what we could do, I know we send out a lot of RFPs, and I'm not saying to bring people here, because we could bring people from our surrounding area here. But what I was kind of hoping is that on the RFP front, if we could hire local businesses to do the work, say give them a 5% difference in the price that somebody else charges. So $1 million project, if they're within $50,000, that money, all of that money would stay in our community then, which then helps our taxes, spends money in businesses, and will create some growth.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some laws around what we can do there, but basically you're saying we want to keep as much money, generate as much money in the city as we can, and then keep it here once we have generated it. How about you, Justin?
So a couple things we can start taking a look at. I talked previously about rebranding, how we're viewed as a community within, you know, the markets of other municipalities and so on. I think a big piece that goes into this is really taking a look at those new and vibrant up and coming industries, things like carbon capture. And I know there's some stuff burning in the background as I bring this up, but carbon capture tech is a big, really big industry. We have some of the we should have the lowest utility rates, which should be a prime, you know, bringer of tech. Taking a look at our immigration, we have, you know, a great opportunity of people that are looking to come to Canada, that are looking to make Canada their home. We have to really explore this. You know, immigrants, new immigrants to Canada drive, I kind of answered this in the comments, but they drive the innovation through participating in entrepreneurship in Canada. They make up the like the biggest individual percentage of the country's entrepreneurs, and they're most likely to serve exporting markets, which is a great advantage if you're a community trying to expand its reach. This is not just supporting Medicine Hat and surrounding area. Now this is supporting Alberta, Canada, and international markets, which really set something in motion. So
awesome. My comments on that, I'm probably starting to sound like a broken record now, but it's retention and expansion, incremental growth. So we have amazing industries and businesses here, and most jobs are created by existing businesses. So if we just incrementally make our business environment healthier and more conducive to the success and expansion of our existing businesses, that's one way to create jobs right there. And it's not a big risk. It's just incrementally improving and creating one job at a time. And then on the immigration front, that's, I think, you know, you guys have mentioned that's definitely an avenue. And what we need to also focus on is once we have people who want to come to Medicine Hat to work, what makes them want to stay? We need to make sure we're a welcoming community to encourage people who have, you know, moved from a different country, a different culture, to want to stay in Medicine Hat and really feel at home in Medicine Hat. I think we need to move to closing remarks. Sorry, we only got to 2 questions. And make sure when you're saying your closing remarks that you shout out your social and website. We'll start with Brad.
Well, like I said, I'm an open book. If you have any questions, I have my phone number, which I will absolutely give, because for me personally, I would rather talk to somebody than actually, message them or whatever. And is that okay? Are you okay with that, Linnsie, or is that something that we don't want to do?
Well, if you're comfortable with it, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. So my phone number, if somebody wants to get a hold of me, is 403-928-7185. I don't think there's any question that's a stupid question. So by all means, ask anything. And like I said, I prefer one-on-one. So that's why I'd like a phone, to use a phone. And I really, like I said, I really want this community to grow, but at the same time, I'd really like, because there is a lot of unemployment, that we can hopefully keep the jobs here by, like I said before, possibly the RFP process, which I know, Linnsie, you know a lot more about that than I do. But I'm kind of hoping that possibly we could change the way that we look at that, just to keep here. Whoops, somebody came up to my house that just told me that. I don't know if you heard that. And like I said, my website is Brad Gruszie for Medicine Hat City Council. And like I said, if you have any questions, by all means, give me a call. I far prefer that.
Brad, just to clarify, is that FOR or the number 4 in your website?
FOR.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Brad. And thank you for coming. Immanuel.
Hey, I've lived here a long time. I've lived here for 65 years. So I'm going to bring some history. I'm going to bring some experience in the city of Medicine Hat. I've lived through the times where we had 25,000 people. I've lived through the boom times of the 70s, the death in 1982 with the NFB, with our federal government taking all our money. You know how that goes. And we reached 60,000 in 2007. So now 13 or 14 years later, we've only increased by 5,000. So our growth is small. We need to encourage, like you said, we need to encourage local businesses to grow. You're right, we need to grow. Each one of those businesses could hire one person, just one person. We can make a big difference in this community. So I am on Facebook, on Instagram, I think, because I don't do those things. I do not have a website because, I don't. So if you want to email me, it's Immanuel Moritz at gmail.com. If you want to phone me, it's 403-866-9456. I think that, we should think about this as a collaborative process. The new council is not about me making decisions. It's a group of 9. We all have to either agree to disagree. We need at least 5 people to get on side, preferably more than that, but we need to have that discussion where opposing viewpoints or differing viewpoints are heard.
Okay. Thank you, Immanuel. Justin. And Immanuel, thank you for coming. Justin.
Thank you for hosting. So I can be found socially on Facebook at Justin Wright for Council. That's FOR. My website is www.wrightforcouncil.ca. And there's going to be a continuing theme here. My email is wrightforcouncil@outlook.ca or .com. I love this city. I've been here since '98. Work has taken me through different communities in the West. I've been fortunate enough to run businesses in different parts of the province, but I always settle back to Medicine Hat. Medicine Hat has a small town charm with a big city bite. And if we if we really take it to the next level and get away from that small growth is good growth mentality and protect the small businesses that are here. As a small business owner, I'm 100% for retaining our local business and employing local. I think you'll see some really distinct changes into the culture that, you know, we come together with. And, you know, Immanuel really commented on the next council has to be, you know, willing to agree and disagree, but be productive. And I think that sometimes we kind of lose that as kind of a solistical whole, is that we've almost lost the ability to disagree with respect or agree with respect. And, you know, I think that's really where the collaboration comes in, is the ability to say, I respect your opinion. I may not agree with it, but this is how we're going to work together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. My website is clark4mayor.ca, and all of my socials are on there. I don't know what they all are right now. I think it's L Clark for Mayor. And I really appreciate you guys all coming on. We didn't touch on everything that everybody wanted to hear about, but it is really important to have the ability to, like, we all didn't agree on everything, but it's nice to have the ability to work together collaboratively and with respect. And I know we all, regardless of how we get there, we all really care about this city and just ultimately want this city to be a place that we like living, continue to love living, and other people after us continue to love living in too. So I appreciate everyone coming out, and I will sign off.
Thank you, Linnsie.
Okay.
Thanks for the opportunity, Linnsie.
Okay.
Gentlemen?
Bye.